Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Shelly, the owner and creator of the Vintage Hen and Chick, and the day has finally come to reveal the brand new IOD 2025 Holiday Collection. There are 18 products in total. I'm going to first show all the products, and then I'm going to show you some projects that I used the new products on. It is so good. So I know you've been waiting for this. So let's get started. For project one, I have this wooden sign that I picked up at the thrift store, and I'm gonna start out by giving it 2 coats of paint in the color Oxford Fog by the Dixie Belle Silk Line. The Silk Line is an amazing paint line by Dixie Belle. It is a 3-in-1 paint. It has a primer, the paint color, and a top coat all in one. And with this black lettering on here, I wanted to use this to make sure that that primer covered that up. It wasn't raised, so I didn't need to sand it first, but this silk paint does a beautiful job of covering that up. So I'm going to do 2 coats of paint, let it dry completely, and then we'll move on to the next step. I applied my 2 coats of paint, and as you can see, that Oxford Fog covered up those black letters beautifully. And so now I'm going to stamp on this sign with the brand new IOD Christmas Wishes stamp. And guys, when you get your stamps brand new, you just need to take a light grit piece of sandpaper and go over the stamps with your sandpaper. And this is just getting your stamps ready to accept that ink. It's just seasoning them a little bit. You only have to do it one time. And now I'm kind of laying out the stamps that I want to use on my sign. I'm going to use the tree twice. So I'm kind of just positioning it, figuring out where I'm going to put it on each side of that center stamp. And so then once I get everything on my sign where I want it, then I'm going to take my thin mount and pick those stamps up. And use your grid marks with your thin mounts, guys, because that really helps get your stamps perfectly aligned on your projects. And now I'm just taking my IOD black ink and I'm inking up the stamps, and then I'm going to apply it to my sign. And again, I'm going to use the grid marks to line it up with the sign, so that way I have a nice, even, straight impression. Once I get my stamp laid down, I like to hold the stamp down with one hand while I rub the rest of the stamp to make sure that I get everything stamped nicely and clearly on my project. And as you can see, when I lift it up here, my tree there has a little bit of a blank spot. I do go back in and re-ink that tree up and just lay it right back down exactly where it was, and then I get a really beautiful impression. So I'm just cleaning the ink off of my stamps here, And I'm going to take all the stamps off of my thin mount except for the tree, because I'm going to be stamping that tree on the other side of my sign. So I'm going to ink it up here. I'm going to use those grid marks again to get everything aligned. I'm going to stamp it down on my sign, hold it down with my hand, and then press firmly but gently to make sure that I get a nice impression with my ink. So I let my ink dry completely, and now I'm going to distress my sign a little bit. So I'm just taking my finger sander and I'm going around the outside edges of the sign, just sanding and distressing the edges a little bit. Because I used the silk paint on this sign and it has a built-in top coat, I don't have to seal it in. But I want to grunge this sign up a little bit, so I'm going to be using my Dixie Belle clear wax over the entire sign, and I'm just going to apply it with my wax brush and then buff it off with a paper towel, because I'm going to also be using my Dixie Dirt in the color Earth. And the Dixie Dirt is a powdered product and it works really well with the wax. The wax acts as a glue for the dirt, which is why I applied the wax first. And so now I'm just taking a small brush and dipping it in my Dixie Dirt and rubbing it along the outside edge of the sign. And then I'm going to take a paper towel again and buff everything in and blend everything in. And you can also use your wax if you get a little bit of a dark spot, that it's too dark, you can use your wax as an eraser for the Dixie Dirt. So I'm just going to keep applying the dirt, buffing it in with my paper towel, adding wax here and there where I need to make sure everything blends in perfectly. For project 2, I'm going to be adding a transfer to this adorable picture that I picked up at the thrift store, and I'm going to be using a transfer from the brand new IOD Santa's Hollow transfer set. I cut out this Santa transfer to apply to this picture because I thought it looked perfectly with the coloring on this picture. And so I am going to be applying it to the picture. It is a rounded surface, so it's a little bit trickier to do, but not hard at all. And so I'm going to be using a piece of painter's tape just to hold my transfer in place because it is a rounded surface. I thought that that would help out and make it a little bit easier. And now I'm going to remove the backing from underneath the transfer and then lay the transfer down. Now, with a rounded surface, you just want to take your time. If you take your time and go slowly and work from one side of the transfer to the next, you won't have any problems. I did end up with a little bit of cracking in my transfer because of the rounded surface, but I don't mind it at all. I love the way that looks. And so I'm just working from one side of this transfer to the next, rubbing on the transfer and then peeling the transfer up. Transfers stick beautifully to items like this picture. Once I get that transfer completely applied, I'm going to use my fingers just to rub it all in, burnish it down, make sure that there's no bubbles or wrinkles in the transfer. And everything came on there perfectly. I love the way it looks. And now we're going to move on to the next step. So because this picture is just going to be a decor piece, I wouldn't necessarily have to seal it in, but I wanted to use a little bit of the Sweet Pickins Dark Beeswax just over the transfer on the picture because I thought that that dark beeswax would add to the kind of vintage, kind of old-timey look of the transfer on this picture. And so I'm just taking a small brush, applying the beeswax just over the transfer, and then I'm going to use a paper towel and buff everything in and wipe off that excess wax. And what that wax is going to do is it's going to highlight certain parts of that transfer and make it look more vintage, more worn, and more antique-y looking. For project 3, I have this metal container that I picked up at the thrift store, and I'm going to be painting this with the Dixie Belle silk paint in the color Truffle. I wanted to use a silk paint because it has that built-in top coat because I didn't want to have to seal the inside of this container up once it's all painted. So I'm going to start out by giving it 2 even coats of the truffle paint over the entire container, the inside, the outside, and the bottom. And then once that's done, once that completely dries, then we will move on to the next step in this project. So I did 2 coats of the truffle paint over the entire canister. I have great coverage. I absolutely love this color. And now I'm going to be adding a transfer from the brand new IOD Figgy and Flourish Gilded Transfer Set. And what's really special about this transfer set is the gilded transfers come in both silver and gold. And so I'm going to be using some silver gilded transfers on this canister. And I'm just going to apply the transfers. They're very easy. They're a little bit different than the regular transfers. The gilded transfers, you don't need to rub as hard. And so I'm just going to take my transfer tool, rub over the transfer gently, and then peel back the transfer as I go. And what I like to do is I like to rub over the transfer, peel it back and check to make sure everything is transferring. If it's not, I just lay it back down and continue to rub. And then once I get the transfer applied, I like to use my fingertips to burnish it in and to make sure it's completely applied to the surface. And so now I'm going to add this little small transfer below this emblem the exact same way, laying it down, rubbing over the transfer, and then peeling it up as I go. And then I'm going to use my fingertips to press everything down and make sure everything is completely adhered to my canister. I have my transfers applied, and now I'm going to be using some Sweet Pickins white beeswax over the entire canister. There is some nice detail on this canister, and I wanted to highlight it very subtly with this white beeswax. And so I'm just taking a paper towel and applying the beeswax over the entire canister and then buffing off the excess. I want to make sure that I highlight those details a little bit so they kind of pop a little bit more. And so I'm just going to continue to do this around the entire canister, applying the wax with my paper towel and then buffing it back. I am using a small brush to get any of the excess wax out of those crevices and corners where it tends to pool up a little bit more thickly. So I'm going to continue to do that, and then this project is complete. Project number 4 is this beautiful wood round that I got for 50% off at Hobby Lobby. And I love the coloring of the wood on this piece. And so I'm going to be applying the brand new IOD paint inlay called La Folie. I thought that the colors in this inlay would look beautiful with the wood on this round. And so I'm going to apply this inlay using clear coat. I'm going to be using my Dixie Belle satin clear coat. You can apply paint inlays with paint or clear top coat. It works great both ways. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply one even coat of my clear coat over the entire wood round, and then I'm going to apply the inlay. And I always like to use my mister bottle and spritz the paint side of the inlay and kind of let that set while I'm applying the clear coat. That just gets that paint starting to activate and ready to transfer to your surface. So once I get my good even coat of the clear coat on my wood round, then I'm going to take my paint inlay and lay it down on the surface where I want it to be. Once I get it laid down onto the surface, I'm going to smooth it out with my hand, and then I'm going to take my mister bottle again and mist the top of that paint inlay. And then I'm going to take a dry paper towel and dab over the entire paint inlay. And this is doing two things. It's soaking up the excess water that I just misted on there, and it's also pressing that paint into that clear coat to make sure that I get a nice adhesion of my paint to my surface. So my paint inlay has completely dried, and now I'm just taking my mister bottle and re-misting the top of it, and then I'm going to take a dry paper towel and mop up any of that excess water, and then slowly start to peel that inlay off of my wood round. And as you can see, I have a beautiful inlay transfer onto my wood round. This is the most satisfying part of doing a paint inlay. I let the paint from my inlay dry completely, and now all I need to do is seal it in. And so I'm going to apply one even coat of my satin clear coat over the entire wood round, and then this project is complete. For project 5, I'm going to be casting some molds into the brand new IOD Snow Globes mold, and I'm going to be using the amazing casting resin. You can get this on Amazon. I will leave the link to that in the description box below. It's so easy to use. It's super fast. You just mix equal parts of part A and part B into a cup, and then you stir it up until it becomes clear. Once it's clear, then you quickly pour it into your molds. What's really nice about the IOD molds also is they have a measurement on each of the molds of exactly how much resin you need for that mold. So you can just mix up the exact amount of resin that you need, pour it into your molds, and then you don't have any waste. Once I get it poured into my molds, I like to use a popsicle stick to kind of push the resin into the corners that it didn't flow into naturally. Once you have your molds poured up, this sets up super quick in 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, it turns white and then you're ready to use your molds. My molds have hardened up and they turned white, and now they're ready to pop out and embellish. And I'm going to start out by painting the outside edges of these snow globes with the Dixie Belle silk color called Wicklow Glen. And I'm just going to paint the outside of the globes with that. I want to leave the inside of the snow globes white because I'm going to embellish that with something different a little bit later on. So I'm going to do 2 even coats of the Wicklow Glen on the outside of the snow globes. Let that dry completely, and then we'll move on to the next step. So my paint has dried on my snow globes, and now I'm going to use a couple of pieces of transfers from the Figgy and Flourish Gilded transfer set again. This time I'm going to be using gold gilded transfers. I picked out 2 pieces that would fit inside of my snow globes really nicely, and just like the other project, I'm going to peel off the backing of the gilded transfer, rub over the transfer with my transfer tool, and then slowly peel up that transfer once it's applied to the inside of the snow globe. And then I'm going to use my finger just to press everything down, make sure that that transfer has adhered nicely to my resin. And then I'm going to do both of the snow globes. And then once these transfers are applied, then we'll move on to the next step. So I wanted to highlight some of the details on these snow globes, and I'm going to be using my Dixie Belle white wax. These snow globe molds have some beautiful details around the outside edges, and so I'm just going to apply some of the white wax with a brush over the painted areas on these snow globes. And then I'm going to take a paper towel and wipe off the excess wax, and you'll see that that white wax sits nicely into those details and highlights it beautifully. So I'm going to go a step further by highlighting the details, and I'm going to be using some of my Dixie Belle Gold Gilding Wax. And I'm just going to be using it on a few parts of the snow globes. I thought that this gold gilding wax would look beautiful with the gold gilded transfers in the center of the snow globe. So I'm just taking a small paintbrush, applying the gilding wax where I want it on these snow globes. And then once that's done, this project is complete. Thank you so much for watching today's video of the IOD 2025 holiday release products. All of the products are available right now on my website, thevintagehandandchick.com. Now just remember, these are a limited release, so once they're gone, they're gone. So make sure you get yours ordered so you don't miss out. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day.